Today, we're diving into a case that's almost unbelievable in its cruelty. It's a story of shocking abuse that went on for decades, hidden behind closed doors. But it's also a story of incredible courage, and a really hard look at the systems that are supposed to protect people and what happens when they fail. This is the story of the Turpin family. It all started with this one sentence spoken by a terrified 17-year-old girl named Jordan Turpin. On January 14th, 2018, she grabbed a deactivated cell phone and made a call she'd been planning for over 2 years. That one call for help was about to blow the lid off a horrific secret her parents had kept buried for almost 30 years. And that really is the central question of this whole thing, isn't it? How on earth could 13 children be systematically starved, chained up, and abused by their own parents, often right in plain sight of neighbors and society, without a single person stepping in? To even begin to answer that, we have to go back to that 911 call. So when deputies arrived at the Turpin home in Perris, California, they were just there for what they called a welfare check. When Louise Turpin answered the door, she acted, totally perplexed, like she couldn't imagine why the police would be at her house. But what they were about to find inside would change everything. The scene inside was a complete nightmare. The first thing that hit the deputies was just this overwhelming stench of filth and decay. There was garbage piled up everywhere, dead pets, and most shocking of all, some of the children were literally shackled to their beds. But among all that horror, they also found hundreds of journals, a secret record the kids had kept of their own suffering. Inside that house, they found 13 siblings. The youngest was only 2 years old and the oldest was 29. But because of the extreme malnourishment, the deputies at first thought they were all kids. The realization that 7 of them were actually adults was a massive shock, and it just shows you how severe the starvation really was. Let's just focus on that number for a second. 29. That was the age of the oldest sibling, Jennifer. Just keep that number in your head. Because at 29 years old, Jennifer weighed only 82 pounds. To put that into perspective, that's about the average weight of a 12-year-old girl. That one simple fact tells you so much about the years and years of calculated starvation she must have endured. And the physical toll on the younger kids was just as devastating. Medical exams later found that one of the 12-year-olds had arms that were as thin as a 4-month-old baby's. This abuse was systematic. It was happening to every single one of them, no matter how old they were. Now, this level of abuse, it doesn't just happen overnight. For decades, David and Louise Turpin carefully built this public image that was the complete and total opposite of the nightmare happening inside their home. When you look at the timeline, you see just how long this went on. You can see this pattern of abuse just followed the family wherever they went. After they suddenly packed up and left their home in Texas back in 2010, neighbors went inside and found a scene that was eerily similar to what deputies would find in California years later. Filth, piles of garbage, and ropes tied to the beds. The warning signs were there, but the family just vanished, taking their secrets with them. And this slide, this is where the deception gets truly chilling. On the outside, they were devout Christians with this big, happy family. They even ran a registered private school out of their home, with David filing official paperwork saying the kids were getting an education. He was actually later charged with perjury for that. But behind that facade, a hidden reality of being chained, beaten, strangled, and fed maybe once a day. So after the rescue, you'd hope, the story would finally turn towards healing and recovery. And while the parents did face justice, for the children, their ordeal was far from over. In a truly tragic twist, their rescue led them right into another kind of nightmare. Okay, so first, let's look at the legal outcome for the parents. In 2019, David and Louise Turpin pleaded guilty to 14 felony counts, including torture and false imprisonment. They were sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole after 25 years. But most legal experts agree, given how horrific their crimes were, they will almost certainly never be released. But this is where the story takes another gut-wrenching turn. The very system that was designed to protect and care for these traumatized kids, the social services and foster care system, well, it ended up failing them massively. It's almost impossible to believe, but 6 of the younger Turpin siblings were placed together in a foster home, where they were abused all over again. The allegations are just stomach-turning, and the foster parents involved later pleaded guilty to criminal charges. After escaping one house of horrors, the county placed them directly into another one. And on top of that, the public was so moved by their story that people donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to help them. But that money was put into a trust controlled by a public guardian, and the siblings have said it was almost impossible to get access to it for even basic needs. One of the brothers, Joshua, was reportedly denied money just to buy a bicycle. So this second betrayal, it really puts the system itself on trial. The whole case just raises these huge, uncomfortable questions about how the institutions that are supposed to protect children can fail so spectacularly, not just before, but also after a rescue. What we're really talking about here is something called systemic failure. This isn't just about one person making a mistake. It's when the whole structure, the rules, the policies, the lack of oversight, repeatedly fails to do its fundamental job. The Turpin case is a textbook and tragic example. So where did the system fail? Well, it started with a massive loophole for private homeschooling, which let the Turpins isolate their kids for years. Then, after the rescue, social services clearly failed to vet foster parents properly. It failed to teach the kids basic life skills, and it created this bureaucratic nightmare that kept them from their own money. And this brings us right back to the hero of our story, Jordan. After her incredible act of bravery saved everyone, she was eventually let go from the system with basically zero support. No plan for housing, no basic life skills, no idea how to even get food or see a doctor. The system that was supposed to guide her into a new life pretty much just pushed her out the door and said, "Good luck." But, and this is maybe the most powerful part of this whole story, despite everything, despite all these betrayals, the Turpin siblings have shown this unimaginable resilience. They are working, they're going to school, and they're speaking out to try and make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. One of them has even graduated from college. They are true survivors in every sense of the word. And so, this case leaves us with a really critical and lingering question. It's a story that forces us to look past the monstrous actions of two parents and really examine the society that let this happen. When a rescue is just the beginning of a whole new struggle, it really makes you ask, who is ultimately responsible for making sure the vulnerable are not just saved, but truly, truly protected?